Welcome back to Currently in Progress, episode 7. We have my old JV basketball coach on, a mentor of mine. His name is Shad Woodruff. Woody and I go way back. He was actually the first one to start calling me Shark and having it actually stick. So we got a big podcast today to listen to. Stay tuned and check it out.
I was making a little bit of money. Well, we can talk about that.
Go right ahead. We're already going.
Are we?
Yeah. Once I heard you say that, I was like, I'll just start it there.
Yeah. So, do you introduce the conversation and just start rolling?
Dropping.
Okay. So, yeah, as far as Govey being on The Price is Right, I can't even remember what year that was, but I was at college, one of the colleges I went to. I believe I was probably at Saginaw Valley at the time, getting ready to graduate, and Gove told us he was going to be on The Price is Right. So it didn't really surprise me, knowing Govey the way I do, but that he made it on there. But I was actually substitute teaching at the time to make a couple of bucks while I was trying to get graduated from Saginaw Valley. And so I remember I was teaching a class in what you would know as the elementary, what I would know as the high school. It's where I went to high school at Beaverton. But I was teaching probably a 5th or a 6th grade class, something like that. And I remember the whole school shut down basically for the hour of, I think it was 11 to noon is when, something like, if I may be wrong, but I think 11 to noon is when The Price is Right is on. And because our famous Govey was going to be on The Price is Right. And that was back when Bob Barker was still alive and still running the show. And that's why Govey wanted to be on there so badly, is because one of his idols was Bob Barker. Well, so, a lot of the young kids didn't know who Scott Govitz or Govey was. But obviously I did my part to introduce them to him and make sure they knew how important he was to our community and stuff. And anyway, we watched it, and naturally we wanted him to get up on stage, and he failed miserably.
Yeah.
But no, in all honesty, he kept getting outbid by the lady next to him. She kept pulling the $1 up on him trick, and he never did make it out of contestants row. But that was pretty neat to see Gove, on Price is Right, and didn't quite make it up on stage, but he did get to meet Bob Barker, and that was one of his goals. So that was pretty cool.
We talked about the fact that he said, "I'm gonna be on The Price is Right," and then it was game over from there. It's everyone knew it was bound to happen.
Yep, that's what I say about, if you know Govey the way we know Govey, something like getting on The Price is Right to the 99% of the population is a pipe dream. But for Govey, that's just the kind of guy he is.
Yeah.
He knows how to pull that stuff off. That's how charismatic he is. That's the personality that he is, and he's smart enough. He understood the game. He kind of explained it to me. When you go to The Price is Right, there's a super long line, especially back in those days with Bob Barker when it was the real Price is Right, and Barker's Beauties and all that stuff. And he knew that it was not just luck getting chosen to be to get your name called, to come on down. He knew it was about charisma, because it's a television show. They're selling personalities, so they put you through basically a quick interview in line. They ask you what your name is and a couple fun questions and stuff like that. And Govey had the ability to know what type of answers they wanted and how they wanted it answered, and he got chosen, which doesn't surprise me a bit. I mean, I've gone a lot of places with Govey. I am very fortunate to call him one of my best friends. He's meant a lot to me in my life, and I've been fortunate to travel all over with him and go some pretty cool places. One of them being Tiger Stadium, in Comerica Park now, but times where we've gone there and he, you go to Tiger Stadium or Comerica Park, and you don't know anybody. Govey knows a lot of people at Comerica Park. You walk in, and in about the 5th inning or 6th inning, all of a sudden Govey gets up and disappears, and before you know it, you get a phone call or something to come up to door A or whatever the heck, and he's talking to some lady named Deb who works behind the scenes, and before we know it, we're in a press box with free food, and all because Govey's ability to network. And he used to tell me stories of when the old Tiger Stadium, when Al Kaline and George Kell were the announcers, and Ernie was still alive, and Tram and Gibby and all those boys were playing, and Lou, and he would just get up, and he just knew how to move through the stadium, and before you know it, he was in, I can't remember all the stories you tell me, but like standing in the press box with Kaline and Al Kaline and George Kell, things like that. Now don't quote me, but just neat stories that, he just has the ability to, he's done a lot of neat things in life. So
yeah, like the networking is like cool. Just starting podcasting, I've already networked to the point where after this NFL football season, I might have an NFL player
to talk to
podcast with. And I was literally, I'm 6 in, and I'm already like, I know people for this, and I think you did a really good job at it. So let's try to make this happen, because I want to see you do it too. And I'm like, that's awesome. That's crazy.
Networking is so important in life. I went to college for 10 years, and all my buddies tease me about that because I sure as heck don't have a doctorate degree. But Roy, I know we're going to talk about Roy eventually, and Govey being another one, among others, my parents obviously. But in life, you can be the smartest man alive and not be very successful. But if you know how to talk to people or to interact with people and work with people, whether you like them or not, you're not always going to like everybody. Everybody's not always going to like you. But if you know how to treat people and work with other people, that is probably the most important thing you can do to be successful in life. And I've been taught that by, again, my parents, but Roy and Govey, and part of that is the networking.
Yeah. You
never know. Again, something Govey always says, he teaches the young kids this: you're always in an interview. I'm sure you've heard that from Govey.
Yeah.
And that's true if you think about it. You step off your porch in the morning, and the first person that sees you is thinking something about you. Well, technically, you're in an interview. You are saying something to that person. So you're right. That networking thing, and there's another thing that six ways of separation, or 6 degrees of separation. You ever heard of that? So I think it's actually 6 degrees is too big. But if you think how small this world really is, if you take a degree, so I know you, Shark, so that's 1 degree.
Yep.
And then, well, I know your dad also, but someone that you know that I don't know, that would be 2 degrees of separation.
Away, and then, yeah.
So you think of how closely you're connected to everybody in this world. Just think, okay, say Donald Trump. Well, most people would think, well, I know him as the ex-president, but I don't know him. He's light years away from me as far as knowing somebody or being connected to him. Well, that's not true, because I know Scott Govitz, who knows Bill Schuette, who knows Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So that's only 3 degrees of separation that I am from Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And really, that's probably the farthest you could find. Michael Jordan, who, in my opinion, is the greatest basketball player to ever live. I don't even think there's an argument. Some people want to argue, but they're wrong. I'm sorry. No, but I've been fortunate to coach with Roy Johnston. He's introduced me to Tom Izzo, and I guarantee you Tom Izzo knows Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of a neat game to play. And
it's crazy because on one of my other podcasts I talked about, I've heard the story about you're 3 people away from knowing everyone in the world.
Yeah.
Which is obviously the same kind of
concept.
Yeah, same concept. You literally just have to unlock those 3 people and really become good friends, and you can open up everything.
That's right.
And it's nuts because it starts like, you don't know that until you do it.
Right.
Like, if you don't go out there and talk to people, you're never going to know that this person knows this person and this person, and
Right.
all those connections you can make and opportunities that are available to you once you
Right.
go for them.
Yes, and it's also scary. It scares me to death as a coach, and I consider a coach as an educator. And these darn young kids, so many of them, especially these days, that aren't as fortunate to have the people around them that I was blessed to have around me. Great parents, great grandparents, great family, but also great friends such as Gove and Roy,
Community
and
members.
Mike Bassage, and
Yeah.
community members like we have in Beaverton. Some of these young kids with social media do not understand how powerful, in a good way, social media can be, but it can be just as powerful in a bad way. And these young kids that don't have the background and the support system behind them, like we're just talking, that 3 degrees of separation, everybody almost knows everybody. And as soon as you put something on social media, whether it be maybe an inappropriate picture or something that you say when you're 15 years old that you're too dumb, for lack of a better word, to know that you probably shouldn't put that out there to the masses, can come back and haunt you for the rest of your life. I mean, I tell you what, Shark, if I was president tomorrow, and people can criticize me if they want, if I was president tomorrow, social media would be gone. And I know that doesn't help your situation out here right now, because this is social media. It's just unfortunate, in my opinion, that people don't use, they can't utilize social media for the positive.
Yeah.
People always have to take advantage of things and turn it into a negative, and it's sad, but unfortunately it's true. So anyway,
I don't want to. So I gotta cut you out real quick. It is crazy because I haven't talked too much during this. I haven't led you really. You've literally hit like 5 of the past topics in all the podcasts that I've done by yourself without even knowing it. Like Govey's story, you literally told 2 of Govey's story, not like verbatim, but like in your own words, and it was pretty it was wild.
What stories? Like the interview thing?
The interview thing,
yeah.
And like he told me exactly what he said, and you hit it on the head. It's literally like, I have a bunch of aunts and uncles and a lot of people that would watch in Beaverton, so at least you got that many viewers, blah, 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 blah. And like, that's all he said, and he said it super fast, and he knew exactly what he was going to say before he walked in.
Yep.
And he was like, the producers are so young that all you got to do is be like weird, like the weird, quirky guy, like, and it's going to work.
Right.
And that's exactly what he did. But then the social media thing, we'll get back on that. It's almost been hit in every podcast I've done so far, at least to a degree. But like, everyone, I would say, is in this, not in the same boat as in canceling it, but in the same boat that there are definitely negatives that are far more prominent than the positives.
Yeah.
And it's, like you said, like, people can be negative. Like, the business side of everything is manipulative.
Yep.
And you're not going to get away with it. But there's also the positive, obviously, like you said, like podcast, like me trying to do this.
Yeah.
And that. But no, it's crazy because, Lance said something about how, like, he can grow his business through social media,
yeah,
which obviously is like a great thing. And he's like, yeah, but it also sucks because he like goes on TikTok and he makes basketball training videos.
Yep.
And he's like, there'll be comments on it when he wakes up, and it'll be like, you suck, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, where is the need for that?
Right.
And
it's sad. I tell you, it really is. It really does make me sad, literally sad. At times I get depressed because I just think, there's enough bad in the world without any of our control. It's sad to think that there are so many people out there that choose to be negative about things like a basketball video. Do you really? I don't mean this, but it makes me, I'm old enough, I'm 45, I'm old enough, I didn't go through any wars, but I'm old enough to really appreciate or at least maybe it was because I was raised by a family that was only once removed from World War II. And my grandpa, who, he didn't fight it in Normandy, but he was, a couple days after Normandy, he was on the cleanup crew. And the things that man saw, friends of his and things that happened there, and I just think, would that man or the people that he rowed that boat over to Normandy or, in World War II, all they wanted to do was get home to their family. They would not, I guarantee you, they would not have taken the time to watch a TikTok video of a young man trying to make a living at basketball. They would not take the time to make a negative comment. Just...
Who needs it?
It's unbelievable to me that people have that much time in it. So I guess my point was, I don't mean this, but in some weird ways, I think the country, we just went through a terrible thing with COVID. I don't think the majority of this country understands how lucky we are to live in this country. They don't. I'm convinced of that, because only in a country so great can people get away with saying the things they say on social media with no care in the world, no repercussions. You can say whatever you want to say about the president, or I don't care which side you're on. You can, be derogatory to anybody you want to with no repercussions hardly at all. Only in the country this great can you do that.
Yeah.
Try doing that in North Korea. Try doing that in Afghanistan or some of these other places and get away with
being derogatory and being negative like that.
Right. It just doesn't exist. I just, it's awful sad, but that's the kind of stuff that bugs me about social media. It just, life is too short and it's too good to be
worried about other people.
I think about that too. Just in this country, there's 330 some million people. I'm going to guarantee you there's not 330 million experts on any one topic.
Yeah.
But for some reason, when you're on social media,
everyone is.
You think you're an expert.
Yeah.
Not you. Everybody thinks because they get to hide behind that screen, and they can voice their opinion and there's no repercussions again. And it's just funny how people aren't quite so smart when they have to be face-to-face and interactive with somebody. So, anyway.
Actually be able to argue like a rebuttal.
Right.
Like, you don't have to answer back in that situation. Right. So, like, you're done. Like, you won your little battle.
Yeah.
No, we've talked about that before when I was intern for you, about, like, you should only really be talking to, like, certain people about certain things when it comes to being an expert. Like you said when we had the conversation, he's like, if you want to talk to me about basketball or whitetail, like, I can probably give you a pretty knowledgeable insight. If you want to talk to me about anything else, you just take it or leave it.
Right. That's my opinion. I can give you an opinion.
Yeah.
Everybody has a right to their opinion. That's another great thing about this country. You have a right to your opinion, and you have a right to say whatever you want on social media. But yeah, I think what you're touching on in regards to myself, I feel like I have quite a bit of knowledge in land sales, because that's what I do for a living. I work for Whitetail Properties, and I work there because of my background in outdoor television and being an outdoorsman. And so, and then basketball, another thing I've grown up doing. I've coached with arguably the greatest high school basketball coach in the state of Michigan. I've been around a great program. So naturally I'm going to have some degree of credibility to talk about that. It doesn't mean that I'm John Wooden by any means, but I feel more comfortable saying I could have a intellectual debate with you about those topics. But if I'm going to get an argument about algebra, I'm an idiot. I'm going to lose that argument. But there are some people that just because they're on social media, they feel like they can argue about algebra or politics, probably a better example. Everybody thinks they know everything about politics, and doggone it, they don't. And I think that's it is a cancer, not only in our country, but in the world, that has pitted one side of politics against the other. And to me, it's very sad to see that the politicians have taken advantage of that. You cannot tell me that 330 million people split down the middle hate each other because they're on the other side. I often tell people, or think about, and I'm going to get a little, I guess I'm going to go down a dark road here, but we hear a lot about racism these days, and by no means am I ignorant enough to think that there is no racism in this country. There absolutely is. But I refuse to believe that this country is racist. It may have been founded that way, but again, based on our country and our Constitution has allowed for this country to make mistakes, but to improve on them. Are we perfect? Absolutely not. But our Constitution allows for us to learn from our mistakes and make them better. I refuse to believe that this country is racist, systematic racism, all that stuff you hear on television. When you turn the television off, and I know we're kind of sheltered up here in northern Michigan and Beaverton, there's not a ton of diversity, but we do have some diversity in our community. And I'm not just some hermit that lives in Beaverton my whole life. I've been fortunate to travel around this country and even the world a little bit. And it seems to me the only time I ever see racism 24/7 is when I turn on a news station or I go on social media. And again, forgive me if I'm being insensitive, because again, that's the last thing I want to do is be disrespectful or to ignore the fact that there are people that have suffered racism. It's the worst thing that's ever happened in this country or this world. Almost equally, and I want to be very careful because you can get yourself in trouble saying some of these things, but almost equally sickening as racism as politicians taking advantage of racism for a personal or political agenda. And go ahead and prove me wrong that that's not taking place. To me, that's sickening. Anyway, I could probably get myself in trouble if I go too far, but I refuse to believe that this country is systematically racist.
Yeah, it's a big topic. A lot of just being in college and stuff and listening to that kind of talk. I don't know, me just being who I am, you never really you think about it. I mean, I've had so many friends just in just playing basketball, and I mean it's not like I've met a lot of people playing basketball.
Yep.
And at no point have you ever thought different. You don't think differently of anyone. If anything, the only reason I don't even know where I'm going with this because I don't want to say the wrong thing, obviously. Yeah. But you play against black people, you play against white people. Everyone has their own little way of playing, and it doesn't mean anything about them being their racial profile or anything. It's just how they play and how they've grown up. If you couldn't see the skin color, you'd still be able to tell the difference between them just because of how they grew up and the cultures they grew up. Maybe that's the part that people are not going against, but criticizing. It's just the way they grew up. You systematically or whatever it is, or just typically, black people grow up in certain communities in comparison to white people. That's how it is. What if those areas, just what they learned in those areas, are different than what we learned in those areas, in our areas? So it's just difference of opinion, and it's taken too far just because of the skin color.
Right.
And it's okay, you have so many times where even when you're a kid, kids do it all the time, and they don't even they didn't understand it. At least I didn't, but they'd be oh, you're just saying that because they're black, and I'm I don't even know what you're talking about. I just said it because they're maybe they, I don't know. There's just so many different situations. There's so many other factors rather than skin color why people don't get along. But then they make it about the skin color, and it's what
it's
are we doing?
It's a political agenda.
Yeah,
for the most part. I'm a believer that God made one race, and it's called the human race.
Yep.
And, if you want to be a good, productive person, I don't care if you're green or purple or white or black. Again, I didn't grow up around a lot of diversity, but I welcome it.
Yeah.
To me, I want my kids to be more exposed to it. I love the diversity. How boring would this world be if everybody was like me? I can run my mouth all night long. Shark, you know that as well as anybody. But I think this world would be awful boring if it was all me.
Same, yeah.
Or all white or all black or anything. I think diversity is awesome. And I think the diversity is even better when it's connected or
Integrated between each other. Yeah, like
instead of intentionally trying to divide, because to me the reason they do that, visual division is quite easy because you can see it.
Yeah.
If you couldn't see the difference between a white man and a black man, it'd be awful hard to tell the difference. I don't, So I think, again, people with negative agendas utilize things to their advantage, and it makes me sick to my stomach because this country is great already, and it makes me awful sad to know how much better it could be if there weren't politicians. And you probably noticed how I haven't said Republican or Democrat. I'm saying politicians, period, are at fault of dividing one direction or another. You can say you listen to me long enough, you probably figure out what side of the fence I probably lean to. At the end of the day, I'm firmly in the middle as far as I'm an American and I want this country to be successful. And if you're black, if you're Puerto Rican, if you're white, if you're gay, I could not care less as long as you want to be a successful, productive human being that loves everybody else.
Yep.
Period. So
it's a simple way to think about it.
Yep.
When it comes to that and being caring about people and everything, you obviously coach basketball. What I've heard obviously stories because I've been around, but how did you really get into basketball? Because I've heard one story and I don't know, I haven't heard all of it. So
yeah, so obviously I'm born and raised here in Beaverton, so I'm very fortunate to to be from a town. Just Roy Johnston has coached since the Ice Ages, so he's been around for a while. So but as a young kid, you don't have the perspective, I guess, to realize how lucky I was to be raised in this community, being someone that loves sports in general, but basketball. Roy Johnston, he was, when I was in school, was a 5th grade teacher and kind of disciplinarian of the school at that time. That was back when the teachers could whip your butt, and Roy did that on multiple occasions for me. And if you ask him, he'd say, "Yeah, I must not have done it enough because you're still a pain in the butt." But anyway, tell you how bad that whole. I'm getting off on a tangent here, but they say that spanking kids is just the worst possible thing you could do. Well, Roy whipped my butt several times, and now I think of him as, outside of the men in my family, the most positive, influential person I've ever had in my life. So I guess
take it or leave it.
Whipping my butt wasn't so bad for me. Yeah. But anyway, back to the point. When I was in college, I graduated high school. I played for Roy in high school. I was a good player, but I by far was not one of Roy's all-staters or best players. So when I got into college, I kind of drifted around. I went to Ferris out of high school to play baseball. I played 1 year, and then they canceled the program because of Title IX. And so at that point, I kind of, again, young kid, and lost my drive for a minute because baseball was taken from me, and I didn't transfer anywhere at the time to try to play another, to go to another school to play. So I kind of drifted around, and I didn't drop out of college, but I did not take a lot of time. I didn't spend as much time in classes as I should. That's main reason it took me 10 years to graduate, because I just goofed around. I mean, there was semesters where I'd only take 3 credit hours. Well, I transferred to Central Michigan after a couple years out of high school, and I wasn't doing good. I mean, I wasn't doing anything bad. I wasn't being a bad person. I wasn't doing drugs or anything like that. But I just was kind of being a loser, if you will. I wasn't taking my classes. I don't think I was even working at the time. Just kind of bumming around. And one day I get a phone call from Roy out of the blue. I mean, I hadn't talked to Roy since I graduated, probably 3 or 4 years before. And, you know, in a way that only Roy can do, he gave me a pep talk. It's more of a butt chewing, but he told me, he asked me some questions that he already knew the answer to. How is college going? Well, not very well. How many classes are you taking? I think I had 1 credit, or 1 class. So he said, this is what you're going to do. You're going to get your butt back in school. You're going to take at least 12 credit hours a semester. And he said, are you working? No. He said, I want to see you in my office tomorrow morning. And that was when he was athletic director at the junior high. So I said, all right. So I drove from Mount Pleasant back home. Walk in there like, oh boy, I felt like I was back in 5th grade going to get in a SWAT. And Roy told me, I got an opening for the 7th grade basketball position. I want you to coach it. Well, I was excited because I loved basketball and wanted to be in the program. I never thought of it like that. And I said, what do you want me to run? Meaning what offense and that kind of stuff. He looked at me like he does, like, I couldn't care less what you run. You're probably going to run what we run because that's all you know. He said, I want you, and I want people to understand this about Roy. I'll never forget this. He said, I want these kids to love basketball more at the end of the year than they did at the start of the year. Because if they don't love the game, they're never going to work at it enough to get better. And you, Shark, you've heard the basketball's a skill sport speech a million times. But he wanted to make sure I made these kids love the game more at the end of the year than they did at the start, which I never forget that. And you can attest, as being coached by me and Roy, we are hard butts, for lack of a better word. I mean, we're kind of old school, don't have a problem getting in kids' butts, yelling, that kind of stuff. But it makes me proud to know that the vast majority of guys that played for Roy and myself, when they're done, they realize that we love those guys. We love our kids. Just because we yell at them don't mean we don't love them. And they understand that, and you can see that from all the guys coming back year after year after year, wanting to still be a part of the program. So anyway, kind of back to your question. So Roy offered me the position at 7th grade, and I took it. And he also told me, he said, I want you to start surrounding yourself with good people, meaning people like Scott Govitz, Mike Bassage, those kind of guys. And that was a turning point in my life. Now again, I got to be clear. I don't want to sound like I didn't have a good upbringing. My parents are great parents to this day.
Just college, you got a little lost
yeah,
in a way.
I mean, the old saying, it takes a village. My mom and dad are great. I couldn't have had better parents. But again, you get out on your own and you're kind of allowed to stray a little bit, and I just needed somebody else to grab me by the back of the hair and say, listen, buddy,
let's do it.
Get yourself back on the straight and narrow. So that was a big point in my life. So I started coaching 7th grade. I think I coached 7th grade for 2 years, and then maybe 8th grade for a year or two. We bounced around back then a little bit, and then had an opportunity to move up. I remember the class, it would have been
14.
It would have been
Austin's
year. Austin and Travis Shields and
Oh yeah, it would have been.
Anthony
That was
Brubaker,
11 or 12 then.
those guys.
Yeah.
That was the group that I coached them in 7th grade, and I went to 8th grade with them, and then I went to 9th grade with them and followed them all the way through. Now, I wasn't the varsity coach, but I've always been the assistant.
Yeah.
So that was the group that I followed all the way through, and I got a picture when we won the conference or something. I got a picture with I think there were 7 seniors or something like that I
Had that long.
coached all the way through from 7th grade. So
Yeah.
that was pretty neat. And here I am still here today. I coached JV for 12 years, something like that. And then a couple years ago, Roy and Jen and Mr. Pasalacqua asked me if I would be the co-head coach for varsity. I still help with the JV too, but I'm considered the co-head coach of varsity now, and I think that's kind of a transitional thing for, Roy's gonna be done at some point. We don't know when that is, but
Could be.
who knows? So
He might live forever and just coach basketball. No, but so like, obviously you coached me when we were when I was coming up. In freshman year, we had Spenny and all of us, and we were pretty decent. When I remember the first practice, the first thing I did, I got yelled at you like 3 times in a row. And it was the first thing I did. Yeah, it was. We did a 3-on-2, and I was the point guard, and I did a one-handed pass. And it was the cool Woody at that point. You just stopped the practice, and you're like, Shark, one thing we don't do is one-handed passes. And I was like, okay. I was like, I guess that's not what we do here. So I just quit doing that. And then I'm pretty sure there was something else. I don't remember what I did, but you came unglued. And then you're like, Shark, what did I just... Or I probably did it again, or I tried to throw over someone. And then you just yelled at me again. And that's when, like, the whole... you just kept saying Shark. So then that all took off. And that was when that nickname kind of stuck, was that freshman year.
Okay.
So that was kind of cool. And, like, one of the people that always did it was Grant Smith.
Great. Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, Grant Smith started calling me Shark constantly at that point, and then everyone else kind of started catching on, and then people would ask me in the hallways, like, who the hell's Shark? And I'm like, oh yeah, well, that's what he calls me, and everyone else just stuck with it. It was just, It was weird. It was weird.
Well, that's your dad, your dad, Tommy O'Brien, but everybody I grew up with all my older buddies that were close to your dad's age. Your dad's name is Shark. That's what everybody in town knows him as, so to me, you were Little Shark, but we just called you Shark, Sharky, and guys have got to have a nickname, man. So that's just what yours was, and it worked out because in those years, we've been fortunate to be pretty good, pretty consistent, but we were pretty good during your years, and Spencer and those guys, and that was the era of where the Bleacher Creatures really were really big. We won the Battle of the Fans thing, and I remember the Shark chant or whatever we did, like it was the Florida Gators thing where
Jaws was playing.
Yeah, you can't see it here because we're on podcast, but if you can visualize the Florida Gators chomp that they do, the gator mouth, the Bleacher Creatures, when Shark would come in the game, the whole student section would do the Florida Gators motion for Shark coming in, and he'd typically hit a 3 or something and get the crowd going. So that was always fun.
Yeah,
had a lot of fun. But back to you getting your butt chewed for one-handed passes and throwing over people. That is obviously Roy. I mean, Roy's very. I'll tell a little story about. When I said I was nervous about what I was going to run when I started coaching for Roy. And he told me, he really didn't care. And I learned over time, you think, okay, this guy has won more games than anybody in the history of Michigan. There's got to be some magic play or some magic offense that he does that, something that he knows that nobody else has ever thought of in the history of basketball. Well, the longer you coach, you realize there really is no magic play. There isn't really anything that nobody's not already thought of. What Roy my opinion of why Roy has been so successful is consistency and fundamentals and teaching kids the qualities of life. If you work your butt off, and you know this, Shark, one of his favorite sayings is, hard work pays off. Very simple, but there's no truer statement in the world. Hard work pays off. Be accountable, be a good teammate, win on the scoreboard. There's not enough time in a game to be running your mouth to somebody in the stands or lipping off to the referee or that kind of stuff. And Roy said this 1,000 times. He tells the team, if there's going to be an idiot on this team, it's going to be me.
Yep.
You keep your mouth shut. If a referee needs to be talked to, that's my job. And some people may disagree with that, but that's, I hate to tell you, that's part of the game.
Yeah.
But Roy's opinion is his players should be playing the game in trying to win on the scoreboard. And if you apply the same things in life that make you a successful person in life to the game of basketball, you're going to win a lot of basketball games. There's really no big secret. So, and then he also, with that, Roy is a master of understanding what his players can do. Very rarely do we have guys that can run up and down the floor and dunk and all this stuff you see on TV. And I think there's too many young coaches. I guess we're kind of spilling the beans here, but I think there's too many coaches that want to teach their kids all these fancy moves and stuff like that. Well, those moves are only going to be successful for a person or a kid that is dedicated enough to spend a lot of time to be able to use those moves. Roy understands very few kids actually spend that much time honing their skills. So he takes a team and he understands what that team can do. And if a kid comes down the floor and throws a one-handed pass, it might look great 1 out of 10 times. And the crowd might hoot and holler. And that's all they remember. But for a coach like Roy, he remembers the 9 turnovers that happened. And, so he tries to eliminate those things so that way when we get into a big game or a big moment or a championship situation, we can count on our guys to play fundamental basketball and eliminate as many mistakes as we can. And obviously it's worked out pretty well for him.
Yeah. And the fact, the fundamentals and the basics, that's all we literally work on. I've talked to Rusty about this too, and he's like, people ask me what we do at practice. He's like, well, we rebound, we play some defense, and then at the end we scrimmage. And it's it's pretty simple. I've always asked, because my roommates from Gladwin, I've asked them plenty of times, what did you guys do at practice? Because I want to know why was it that we were so why was it that we dominated the conference? Because I didn't understand what we did was complicated at all. It was very simple things. So what could you were you doing even simpler things? What was going on? And he's like, well, we did this and that. He's like, we scrimmaged a lot, and there's some days we scrimmaged a lot, and there's some days we didn't scrimmage at all, and we would just do drill work and all this other stuff. I'm like, so you didn't do this or this? And he's like, no, we'd never do those things. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. I was like, no wonder we did all, it's literally the little things. It's the little things that a coach sees that players don't really care about nowadays. They don't see the scoreboard go up. But if you don't let them score, it's the same as scoring so many points. Create
habits that allow you to win ball games. And again, I got to be very clear when I say this. I sure as heck don't have all the answers to basketball, by far. And Roy reminds people of that all the time. As soon as you think you got all the answers, you don't. And he has also taught me you got to be your own coach, and there's 100 different ways of being a successful coach. You don't. You see guys that you don't have to run around and yell like we do. John Wooden hardly raised his voice and never. I don't think he ever swore in his life. He's the Wizard of Westwood. There's all different ways. Some people, like Boeheim at Syracuse, he recruits kids that have 16-foot wingspan so he can run a 2-3 zone, and they win that way. Kentucky, kind of the run and gun and the dribble drive. You got Bobby Huggins at West Virginia with the Press Virginia. There's all different kinds. So believe me, it's not that Beaverton does it the best way. It just works for us, and I think it's
simpler
simplified.
For like a high school.
Yes,
version. Yeah.
it's simplified for me, and this is obviously it's not this easy, but for me, there's 4 things in basketball that if you do better than everybody else, you're gonna at least be in the majority of games. One of them is rebound better than the other team. The other one is don't turn the ball over. The other one is play your butt off on defense, and the other one is execute on offense. So there's a lot that goes into each. There's a lot that goes into each of those 4 things. So I'll kind of go through. Rebounding. Obviously, if you rebound the ball, in order to win ball games, you got to have the ball more than the other team, because you can play the best defense you want to play, but if you don't score more than the other team, you're going to lose. So rebounding, to me, if you don't get a rebound, especially if the offense, you're on defense, the offense shoots the ball, and you give up an offensive rebound, to me, that's a turnover. That's not a missed
second opportunity.
Right. That's not a missed rebound. That is the same thing as a turnover, because you just gave the ball back to the other team. Now, percentage-wise, if you do that too much, naturally the other team is going to score a few times. So you got to rebound on both ends of the floor. If you rebound better, that's one positive for you. Turning the ball over, kind of all go hand in hand. But turning the ball over, again, if you have the ball more than the other team, you have a better statistical chance of winning that ball game. Now, if you're giving the other team the ball without them even earning it, you're just making it easier for the other team to have more opportunities to score. Again, these things are pretty simple. What else did I say? Defense.
Defense, yeah.
You play hard-nosed defense, and you make sure that you are making the other team earn their points. Try not to give up layups. Simple things again. But play hard-nosed defense. Play as a unit. We have our own staples. Like not giving up baseline. That kind of stuff. Taking charges. Everybody's got their own thing. That's our thing. Playing hard-nosed defense is always going to keep you in a game. And then executing on offense, that's not quite as simple as that sounds. Executing on offense, to some people think, well, you run the offense well and you make all your shots. Yeah, well,
it's not going to happen.
That doesn't work like that. Executing on offense for us means understanding your team. And if you got one kid that can score and the other kids can't walk and chew gum, well, then your best bet to winning is to get that kid that can score as many shots as he can get that he can make. And then make sure that the other kids on the team, they know where they can be successful. And we've never told a kid not to shoot, but they better be shooting shots that they practice in practice, that they know that they can make. Mm-hmm. They shouldn't be coming down in another Royism. Only God creates. You do what you're told.
Yeah.
If you prove to us in practice that you can make a jumper from the elbow and you're open, shoot the darn thing.
Yeah.
We have no problem with that. But not everybody is born to be a scorer. And if you've got a scorer, get him the ball. Even a great scorer is probably going to shoot 50%. Probably the best part of our offense is the offensive rebound, weak side rebound. And how many games have we won in our career
because of that?
Because of the weak side rebound itself. So I'm giving up all our secrets, Shark. You got to erase this last part here.
Yeah. Well, they're not really secret. Everyone knows what we do.
Right. No.
Everyone like Meridian even runs our offense, which I find hilarious. I couldn't believe when I saw that this year. I was like, dang, he's like, if you can't beat them, join them. I was like, my God.
I'll tell you what, people might think that they're not hearing right, but Mitch Bone is a darn good coach. And I have no problem saying that. And actually, he and I have butted heads on the floor before, but I have a lot of respect for Mitch and enjoy spending time with the guy off the floor. I've coached long enough to know that competition can bring out the best in you, and it can bring out the worst in you.
Yeah.
And I'll be darned, I know for a fact that's brought out the worst in me on occasions, and that's just competition. I've always thought, I'd much rather have my kid coached by someone that cares and maybe lets it bubble over a little bit sometimes, rather than a bump on a log that doesn't care and never gets excited. And that's, Beaverton Meridian are rivals, and naturally you want to go down and beat the heck out of each other. And sometimes, naturally you're going to, every time an opposing coach gets fired up, it seems like one crowd hates that guy and he's a jerk. Well, you know what? To me, that guy's just fighting for his team, just like we're fighting for our team. So I'm not getting soft here. Don't get me wrong. I want to beat Mitch every time we don't get out and play him, but he wants to beat us too. And at the end of the day, he's a good guy. He loves his kids. He loves his school, and I got a lot of respect for him.
At least you'll know it'll be interesting though.
Yeah,
it's. You like playing against those guys because you honestly don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
Especially when they come out in your own offense.
Right.
And then they do. And just the way he is just you don't know. And at least he's trying. And at least out of the few people in the conference that we do play against, at least he's good. Yep. He's consistently good to you don't go into a Meridian game thinking it's going to be easy.
No, never is.
Yeah.
And I mean, at least on a fan's perspective, I would rather go to that game than I would, some of the other games that we play. I won't name any names, but it's much more entertaining to see a 2-point game than it is a 40-point game. I don't know if it's more fun for me as a coach sometimes, but it is. In all honesty, you want to compete. You want to beat the best, and Mitch has definitely done an unbelievable job with the Meridian program.
It's the value of the win rather than.
And I'm not saying that to kiss any butt. I'm being on. I mean, that's just a fact.
Mm-hmm.
He's a damn good coach with a damn good program. So
what other stuff have you learned over coaching, when it came to just communicating with kids and obviously you get different kids. You get a lot just being in Beaverton, you have a range of skills and backgrounds and stuff. Has there ever been kids that you just didn't know how to deal with or didn't know how to I don't know, coach in a easier word, I guess.
Everybody's different, for sure. The older you get, experience, you can't teach experience. I don't care who it is. And again, I don't have all the answers, and I make mistakes every year. I tell myself every year, I'm not going to get a technical this year. I'm going to be nicer to the refs and stuff. And I've failed every year. And I feel sick about it. When I go home, I'm embarrassed. I hope people know that about me. I do not want to look like a jerk. I don't want to embarrass my community. I don't want to take away from the game. And I'm not trying to justify it, but I am very competitive. It's a fault of mine, if you will. Again, Roy tells us, God did not make me calm, and I am cut from the same cloth. Competition will get the best and worst of me at times, and so I guess I'm always trying to learn. And if you're not trying to learn, you're not getting better.
Yeah.
And that's the same with the kids. Every person on this planet is different. Now, we've been fortunate because Roy's been around so long with that program. The majority of kids coming in, they kind of know what to expect.
Yeah.
They know that Roy and myself are pretty hard, demanding. And they know that coming in, so it's there should be no surprise.
Yeah, if you don't know it coming in, someone didn't tell you.
Right, or you're a new kid off the block, and we don't get too many of those. So for the most part, that's not too hard. But yeah, you're going to have kids that test you a little bit, or You know, they don't pick up on things as quick as you want them to. But, you know, as a coach, that's your job. I mean, yeah, I'm not going to name them. But there's been a couple kids that have tested me more than others that, you know, they got, you know, I was raised old school. You don't mouth off to your elders, you know, or, you know, your authority figures, whether that be a teacher, a police officer, a coach, your parents, your grandparents. You might think you're right. You might even be right. But when someone of a person of authority tells you to do something, you do it. And I have a really hard time, and I think I always will, when a kid has an attitude or mouths off or, you know, talks back to someone like Roy or a referee or someone like that. I just have a hard time with disrespecting authority figures or someone that's, you know, older than you, especially when I know those people are trying to help that kid or that individual. You know, we say all the time, I promise you, we are not trying to make you worse. Doesn't mean we are always right, but we are not trying to make you worse. So what, for me...
What good is your arguing? If you know that, if you know like they're trying to help, then why even argue? Why not just figure out what the miscommunication is?
Right.
Yeah.
Just do your best. We try to be honest with kids. We're going to get after you, but do your best to understand or to just listen to what we are saying, not how we are saying it.
Yeah.
And I tell this to kids. I try to make them understand that I'm going to lose my temper sometimes, and it might even be directed towards you. That doesn't mean that I don't love you.
Yeah.
If you play basketball for Beaverton, I love you. You're one of my boys, and you always will be. That doesn't mean I'm not going to lose my temper. And really what that comes from is they don't let me go on the floor and play anymore. They make me stop at that stupid black line. They won't let me on the floor anymore without calling a technical. So me yelling sometimes is just in the battle of things, and I'm fighting with you, not against you. So don't take it like I'm yelling at you.
Mm-hmm.
I want you almost to be appreciative of, I'm fighting with you, man. Trust me. After the game's over, I'm going to come and hug you and give you a nuggie on the head and maybe even kiss you on the cheek. That's just who I am. So, yeah, to answer your question, are there kids that test you sometimes? Sure. I'll tell you what bothers me more, it seems like it's happening more and more, and it's a sad deal. I think it's more a societal thing than anything, is these doggone kids that have so much potential and they go down the wrong road. They never even get to us, you know, because their grades aren't good enough or they make bad decisions. And, you know, you can't, I hate the saying you can't save them all. I try, you know, you want to save them all. Maybe it's unrealistic to think that you can, but I can sure as heck try to save them all. And I hate failing. And, you know, and it seems like, I hate to admit it, I've failed more often lately with some kids that I've tried to steer in a direction of being an athlete, because I'm a firm believer that athletes, for the most part, are surrounded by good people that care, people that get out of bed in the morning and want to be productive, you know, like coaches and teachers and community members. And boy, you know, there's so, especially over this last year and a half with COVID, and it just accentuated the gap that there is for some kids, and the lack of guidance that they have at home. And it just really bothers me to see some of these kids with the potential that they have that's completely throwing it away because of some of the decisions that they're making, whether it be drinking or drugs or, you know, not going to school because all last year was homeschooled. And it's sick to see a young kid make decisions now at 14, 15, 16 years old that's going to affect them for the rest of their life. I don't know. It's hard to swallow.
Yeah. Back to that like just being able to yell at kids nowadays
Yeah.
and being able to like actually have the kid just be like, okay, like that's what he's saying. Like listen to what you're saying rather than your tone. We had that when I was coaching the last year, and it was freaking hilarious because even the kids looked at me like, well, how was I gonna react? Well, we were in the huddle of the regional final game, and I was telling you told Mitch that we were gonna run this offense, and I knew out of all the 5 people there that Mitch probably didn't know what you said.
Mitch Hall.
Yeah, Mitch didn't know exactly what he was supposed to do on this. So I had him next to me, and I was kind of trying to whisper and tell him like, this is blah 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 blah, and all of a sudden you just hear, "Shut up!" And I looked up, and you were looking dead at me, and I'm like, okay, well, I guess that's time for me to shut up.
Yep.
And like, you explained your thing, and then you patted me on the back and you walked out, and I was like, yeah, I don't care. Like,
Yep.
you don't. And teams, I think the better teams that you've coached, or at least that I've seen people coach over the years, are the teams that have kids that really, like, I wouldn't say don't care what coaches say, but they don't talk about it at all.
Yeah.
They just take it and then they're done with it. Like, they understand blah 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 over whatever.
Yeah.
Because like our team, my like 2015 year, like, I mean, for the like, not trying to undermine Roy, but we listen to Roy all the time. You always listen to Roy,
Yeah.
but you don't take anything he says for like super serious.
Right.
Because if you do, you're not gonna like Roy.
Right.
And it's like he's not like, what he says doesn't come out nice at
Right.
all ever.
No.
So you just take it, and it's like, well, what did he really say? Well, he said I need to rebound.
Right.
Really, that's all he said. He just made it in a meaner way
Right.
to get it across.
That's just
and
his
it's just
personality.
like, yeah,
Yep.
you just take it, and it's just like, okay, well, I need to rebound more. It's
Right.
pretty simple.
And then when you win that ball game, you get to practice the next day, and there's a bunch of cinnamon rolls there for you.
Yeah,
Because he
you're right.
loves you to death.
Exactly.
That's just, and as far as like me yelling at you in that huddle, I knew you knew what I was talking about. You get a 30-second timeout. There isn't time to say, hey, Nate, just a second, please.
No.
That you just wasted 5 seconds.
Yep.
And if you coached or played sports long enough and don't understand that things
Value of
happen,
time.
bang, bang,
Yeah.
you don't have time to be nice, then you shouldn't be
In it.
in it.
Yeah.
And it, we've been, I've learned that from Roy. You're going to say things at times where, boy, you might not say in church, but that's just, I love that part of it. That's guys, that's guys. I shouldn't say just guys. Girls are the same way. That's
Just the camaraderie.
Yep, that's a heated competition, and we're all trying to win, a ball game or, achieve a goal. And I like that part of it.
Yeah.
I'm getting kind of deep here, but why can't the rest of the world and the country kind of live by the same values and the same rules?
Yeah.
Not everything is offensive. And if it is, you got a long life ahead of you.
To deal with, like, not even to deal with it, but to just like if it is offensive, then why do you give it energy?
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying? Who the fuck is that guy to tell me
Right.
blah 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 about myself?
Right.
Okay, cool, whatever.
If you
done.
don't like that person and he offends you, then just ignore that person. And again, I have to be clear. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but to me, words, I have never been offended. I don't think I've ever been offended in my life. Now, that doesn't mean that other people don't truly
get offended. Yeah.
get offended. I'm not trying to take that from those people, but this is, I hope maybe this could help somebody. Words, to me, are sounds that come out of someone's mouth. It's,
I know this is. I actually think I know what you're saying. I was actually thinking about this the other day. If you don't have the intention, like in your head, to think that what people are saying to you are actually mean, all of a sudden when you're listening to people, it comes at you at like a different perspective, and it's just like, okay, well, what are they saying? Like there's no, if you don't go in to the conversation with negative intent, you can think whatever the meanest thing they could possibly say to you and think of it as just criticism rather than like derogatory. And it's weird, like once you start thinking that way, it's like, okay, well, he said that I, like, back in high school, this is how I thought, but people would call me short. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, you just pointed out the obvious, bro.
Right.
Like,
you were short.
And I'm like, who, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, at that, once I got to that level of, like, understanding, like, there's no change in it, you're just pointing out the obvious.
Right.
I'm like, okay, cool. Like, and then you just don't, it's not even criticism at that point. You don't even think twice about it.
Right.
But, like, if someone told me, like, you saying, don't pass over people.
Right.
But, well, it's because you're short. It's not because
God made you short. And
so,
how many
like,
times you
just
heard that?
pass under people
Right.
and you'll be fine. It's just, when you think of people yelling at you or people being derogatory, think about how it could actually be right.
Right.
Instead of
Short short is an advantage, just like height is an advantage. Just
yes.
use it.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be derogatory. And again, maybe some people have a complex, or they don't. They would rather be tall. I respect that. Or or in any different, what they look like, or
Yeah.
some people have more money than others. I understand.
Differences.
And maybe it's easier said than done, but I wish people were more comfortable with what God's given them and appreciate it and understand that, they are equal in this country. They've got equal opportunity. That doesn't mean they're guaranteed equal rights, but in this country you do have an equal opportunity to use what God's given you to work your butt off
And do it.
Yeah. And be successful with it. Hate's a big word. I hate excuses. There are people in this country that legitimately have excuses that they could use to sit on their butt and collect, government handouts. And don't. In this last year and a half, I've seen legitimate handicapped people in wheelchairs, missing limbs, blind people that are working, that are out there working 9-to-5 jobs and trying their best to be a productive part of the society. They're not using excuses. I cannot stomach people with excuses. I read a book, I can't even remember the name. Believe it or not, Shark, I read a book one time. But it talked about excuses and that you are in control of all the decisions and things that happen in your life. And if you think about it, you really are. Mm-hmm. Everything that happens in your life, you may not like the answer, you might not like what you had to do or not do, but if you think back far enough about everything that happens to you, there was something that you could have done
prior
to change that outcome.
Oh yeah, and you always think about it too.
Yep, and it's inconvenient. It maybe it's not even realistic to think I'm going to make all the right decisions to prevent negative things from happening. I mean, that's part of life. But if you think about it that way, you are in control of your life.
And I think if you embrace the fact that you're going to make mistakes, then shit gets a lot easier.
Yep.
Because, like, you don't get... And, I mean, same for basketball, same for life. Like, you never do anything right the first time. Like,
yep.
You're not going to shoot a three-pointer and make it every time. Like,
nope.
Figure it out. Like, there's just so much to
Failure.
Yeah. You
have to fail in life, for the most part, to be successful. Mm-hmm. It's part of it.
So one other thing, back to basketball. Well, I mean, if we get any more basketball in, that's fine. But I just want to talk about this real quick. How was it? And I'll lead up with this. Why is it that during warm-ups, you always just sit on the bench and, like, just keep your head down and just breathe? Like, what is that pregame ritual?
Me?
Like, yeah.
I'm praying.
You're praying. Yeah. Okay. I figured that's what it was, but I always knew, like, you always did that, and for the first couple games, I honestly never really picked up on it.
Yep.
I was like, okay. So, onto that, the main reason I remembered that was the first game that Lake was up. You were sitting there praying, and then, like, I don't know if you were crying or what, like, you were definitely, like, emotional,
And I went over and I asked you, I was like, what's up? Like, what are you doing? And he's like, it's cool seeing my son on varsity.
Yep.
So how was that like whole game and that experience
Yeah.
just being that last year?
Yeah. Pretty cool deal. Basketball. I get me choked up, Shark. Like I said, Beaverton basketball has meant a lot to my life. And, my kid, Lake, has done a pretty good job. He's worked his tail off, and we needed him on varsity this year. As a freshman, we were very talented, but we weren't very deep. So we needed him to come up and be a secondary ball handler, and we knew he could handle it because the talent that we had was not going to force him into a big role. He could be a secondary ball handler, not have to guard their best player, and he wouldn't have to, make too many, he wouldn't have to create too much. He could just knock down shots, and he can shoot it. And so that gave us the opportunity to bring him up, and he's been around the game long enough where he knows the game well. He knows our program. So him along with Logan Love, we brought those boys up, and they just filled a spot for us very well. And it just was, for someone like me that was brought up around Beaverton basketball all those years, it was just, like any dad, it was a proud moment to see my kid run out on that basketball floor for the first time. And I know how much it meant to Lake. And another thing was, to have my son being coached by Roy.
Yeah.
You don't know. I mean, Roy's 79 years old. He'll be 80 in March. You don't know how long he's going to coach, and the fact that he actually got to play for Roy Johnston, that's pretty dang cool. So the praying thing, I don't know. It's just I'm not someone that would ever want to shove religion down anybody's throat. I think that's a very personal thing. It is for me, but I always I try to say a short little prayer to protect all the guys, on both teams, the refs, the coaches, and just hopefully the boys can go out there and play to their best potential, stay safe, healthy, and happy, and just enjoy themselves, but compete, and just kind of thank God, because I think it's important to acknowledge that you're not the most important thing on this planet.
Yep.
So.
No, that was really cool, and like and I obviously knew Lake because I played back when he was at practice, and I would shoot with him on the side, and he'd rebound for me on free throws, and we played like 1-on-1 and stuff. And even back then, you could tell that he was going to be good. And then once you actually saw him play on varsity, like you said, he didn't have to do what you think what he's gonna have to do eventually is be the scorer, be the stud. But he literally embodied the Beaverton, he dove on the floor 4 times the first game he was in. He had 3 or 4 steals. He had 9 points, I think, shooting 3 threes wide open because just no one was guarding him. And everyone on the team was like, okay, well, if you're not going to guard Lake, we're going to give him the ball. It's not rocket science. He can shoot.
Right.
So it was just cool, the fact that he came in and immediately played the role.
Yep.
And a lot of kids, I talked about this with a kid at work while we were working on the freight and just in the back room chilling. It's people don't know their role in life or in sports, or at least they do know it and they don't want to accept it. Because Lake accepted immediately the fact that I am not going to dribble excessively. I'm not going to shoot 4 shots. I'm not going to do this, and this.
Yep.
Because guess what? I don't have to, and that's just going to, it's not smart to do.
Right.
So he accepted that role and just did it. And we were talking about how in life, we were actually talking more social media when we were at work. And it was a really good talk. I'm glad I got to bring it up, but I was with my buddy Caleb. And we were talking about social media and how, news' role and, all their kind of roles and, how you kind of defined them have now gone away. So, the news is now more like social media. Mm-hmm. And, you see, and it's getting really big now, but, Instagram, Snapchat, and YouTube have been cycling towards this, short story, minute-long video TikTok type stuff. Mm-hmm. So now you got all these social media
things that were so distinct and so representative of their own like group, like Facebook, typically older people, blah blah, Instagram this, pictures, Twitter, short funny stuff. Now they're all the same, just a different name. And it's like, what is like they just it's just the whole role, like everything's getting muddled and no one is just accepting that be good at what you're good at and run with it.
Yeah.
And I mean, everyone thinks that you have to, I mean, you do have to adapt, but there's a point to being like, this is what I'm good at. Like, how do people get away from that is what I don't understand.
Yeah, again, that goes back to the generations before the social media explosion in how American citizens appreciated the country that they lived. It's sad, but I don't think people appreciate, and I think it'll come around. Society is kind of a pendulum sometimes. It kind of swings one way for a long time, and then it has to swing back. There was a time, way before me, but around, World War II, for example. We just came through the Depression, and then we go through the World War II, and people are living on rations. During the Depression, there were literally people that could not afford to keep their kids. Imagine that. And they loved their kids. Imagine having to make a decision, in the best decision that you could come up with, because you loved your kids so much that you gave your kids away because you could not feed them. Imagine that decision. And I pretty comfortable in saying I don't think there's anybody in this country that is forced with those type of decisions today. Yet there are people that say they hate this country for reasons I can't understand, because they're watching their chosen news station and they call it news. It's not news. There is no news anymore. It's all created. News is created now. Fox News goes out and they tell the story the way they want to tell it. CNN tells the story the way they want to tell it, and they're selling this crap to the people that continue to watch it. And I was one of them. I was one of these people that was watching news and getting what I felt was information. But the longer I watched it and the more literally sick to my stomach I got, the more I realized, you know what? I'm not part of the solution here. I'm part of the problem, because news, quote unquote news, is big business now. The way I like to think of it is, how many news stations can there be telling the same story? I mean, if a deer crosses the road and gets hit by a car, there's only so many ways you can tell that story. Mm-hmm. That's news. A deer runs across the road, Johnny hit the deer dies in the ditch. I mean, I'm being awful simplified here, I guess, but now when you got 25 different news stations, the only way that they can get ratings is by taking that story and spinning it.
Yeah. Johnny was drunk and hit the deer and then hit someone else and blah blah, when the facts just aren't there and they make it up.
Right. Yeah. And they spin it and they spin it and they spin it, and it becomes so dangerous, and that's what's happened. And that's, one of the reasons this country is so divided right now is because people have picked sides against each other. And we're just falling for this monster that's called the media. I don't care if you call it right wing, left wing. It's the media in general. Is just a cancer in this country, and it needs. Here we go. I'm getting off on. I'm going to start to.
So, let's get onto this. So, instead of, diving into media and stuff, mm-hmm. What do you do that gets you out of that, obviously? What situations do you put yourself in? What hobbies do you have that can completely negate having a phone?
I just have completely... I just told my mom tonight, I cannot remember the last time I turned on a news station. Yeah. I just have made the decision, almost like going on a diet and stopping drinking Mountain Dew, which I failed at completely. But I have not failed about turning the news off. If I see political jargon, I don't care what side it's from, I'm done with it. I don't even care if it's sports. I haven't watched, and I hate to say this, I did not, and I can honestly say this, I did not watch one snap of the NFL this year. Not one. Not the Super Bowl or nothing. And I hate that because I love the game. But I just decided that I'm going to be part of the solution. You can have your own beliefs. That's fine. But I don't need to have political jargon shoved down my throat. I don't care from what side it is. So to how I filled those gaps, I spent time with my family. I try to be a better basketball coach. I tried to find kids that were in my school that there's too many kids to be able to go out and pick them all up and try to help them. But I try to pick kids that I can see that have potential. And a lot of times I see some athletic potential in them because that, gives me something to relate to. But I see them struggling, or maybe their home life isn't as good, or something that I can give them. I try to put my time into those kids and try to help them out. If I can help one or two kids kind of change their life direction and be better people and maybe be successful like Roy and Govey have done for me, then why in the heck would I not do that? Why would I watch some jackwagon on news, cable television, trying to tell me how bad my country is? I couldn't care less. Those people can go pound sand as far as I'm concerned. And again, I don't care what side of the fence they're on. They're all a bunch of scumbags. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. If you are making money from dividing this country, you are a scumbag. You can write her down.
Put it in the presses.
Yep.
Even though no one uses those anymore.
Right.
No, social media is definitely a beast, and it does a lot of harm.
Yep.
But it does a lot of good in the sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's just information being available. It's kind of crazy. And like you said earlier, it was more of people can talk about whatever they want now because there's enough information out there to where like it's a Google search away. Like if I really want to know how to talk crap to this dude, I just Google a couple things and like how good basketball players are or whatever drills to do, and this is what you should do. Like everyone's just smart enough to make a difference.
Yep.
And it's whether you're able to differentiate that knowledge from actual expertise rather than just simple, Google searches.
I'm going to kind of turn the story on you real quick. I'm going to see if you pass the test here.
Okay.
Okay, because everybody out there, whoever's listening, Sharky's a pretty smart dude. I'm going to see if I can prove a point right now.
We like to think I'm a smart dude.
Really quickly, what is 9 times 7?
9 times 7, 63.
Okay. What is 8 times 9?
8 times 9? 76 or 72.
72. Okay, you just proved my point.
Yeah.
All right. So, my son Lake struggles. He's a smart kid, gets great grades. Struggles with stuff like that right there.
Yeah.
Like 8 times 9, 72. 6 times 3, 18. Bam, 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 bam. Now I'm gonna date myself and make myself sound old, but this, again, you're gonna tell real quickly that I can't stand social media and the internet and stuff because I think it's dumbing us down. Because there's these new ways, the new way of teaching math and teaching things as if the old way didn't work. And all I see now is if I ask a question of a kid, what year did Joe DiMaggio hit 56 hits in a year? I can tell you it's 1941.
Yeah.
Okay? A kid, and that's probably a bad example, but a kid what's he going to do?
Google it.
He's going to Google it or ask Siri.
Yeah.
More importantly, what year did Abraham Lincoln get assassinated? Or, those kind of things. I can tell you off the top of my head because I learned it from my teachers. Now, if I ask a question of you, what would you say?
Oh, I don't know the answer to that.
Don't have a clue.
No.
And I'm not saying that derogatory or as a put down. That's how you were raised. That's how you were taught.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very sad that I can't ask my kid. Flash tables. Mary Lawrence, God bless her soul.
Mary Lawrence was my teacher.
Yep.
My 4th grade teacher.
Okay, so you had her right at the tail end of her career.
Yeah, I had her on the year she retired.
Okay, so she was my favorite teacher. She was my 4th grade teacher.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
she made math fun for me. And I still, to this day, I'm not good at like algebra equations and those type of things. But, the basics, the adding, subtracting, multiplying, division, she is the one. And I can do that with Albert Einstein, those type of things.
She would have you do the
Flashcards.
but she would line you up in 2 lines, and then she would just lift it up, and whoever won.
She made it a competition.
Yeah.
And for someone like me,
Loved it.
I loved it. And Daryl Greer and I, we grew up together, played sports together, but Daryl ended up being our valedictorian. And I was far, far, far from being a valedictorian. But in 4th grade math class,
You kill it.
Daryl and I went after each other.
Yeah.
Because it was a competition. And he would get me sometimes, but I would get him sometimes. And I can't even remember. You'd get to the end, and if you won, you got an extra 5 minutes at recess or whatever the heck it was.
It was me and Yanni.
Yeah.
It was Yanni. Actually, it was funny because Yanni came to Beaverton in 4th grade, and the teacher, Ms. Lawrence, she was like, "Yeah, ladies, he's like a look," and stuff like that. So already, all the guys are sitting here like, "Okay, who's this kid? Like, we're not gonna like him." And that was the first thing that I really didn't talk to him. I just we met in the math line, and we're like, "I'm not letting you beat me, bro."
Yep.
Like,
and I just the kids nowadays just don't. They get to go. To me, it's cheating. For Pete's sakes, you get to. If you had a cell phone when I was in 6th grade, I'd have got kicked out of school.
Yeah.
For having this, you couldn't even use. It used to have calculators.
Yeah.
They wouldn't even let us use calculators because they wanted you to learn it.
Yeah.
And understand it in your brain. Roy, back to Roy. He has this. He's got a million one-liners and jokes. So he says about the new math. I guess the old math doesn't work, so you got to use this new math. He said, well, I guess if the old math doesn't work, I'm never going to cross the Mackinac Bridge again. Because when they built that, they used the old math, and that must not work, so that thing's going to fall down at any time.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, it's a good point.
Yeah.
2 plus 2 is 4.
Yeah.
And it always will be.
Yep.
I think it's just a bunch of bureaucrats down in the capital cities that are creating more jobs for themselves, job security, and coming up with all this new curriculum horse crap. 2 plus 2 is 4, people.
Yep.
And it always will be.
I think there's obviously value in just knowing stuff like that. But back then also, you always heard you're not going to have a calculator in your pocket.
Right.
Well, guess what? You do.
Yep.
And I get the fact that kids are kind of getting away from that. And it is easy. And is it does it take up brain space to learn that rather than learn something else? I think if you look at other European religion, or not religions, but European cultures and their education system and stuff, they got kids learning multiple languages before fitting. What we could be learning at younger ages could be way more than what we're learning now.
Yeah.
Just because of your ability to do that at that age. It's just the fact that teachers don't have any means or don't have any money or don't have what they need to do that kind of stuff. So that's just what you get from it. But to not use, I guess, technology, me being newer, I'm gonna use it.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? I'd rather than me spending time learning math, and I'm not disproving your point.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna spend time learning math anymore when I can just do this.
Sure.
But
why would you?
Yeah.
I wouldn't either.
Exactly. But there's still, and it's it's not even the fact of that being easy, but actually being able to sit down and you see a thing with patience now. Kids don't have any patience. So they want to learn, they want to learn shit right now, but guess what? It doesn't happen right now. And then that reflects later when they're just just the fact that people go through so much stress not knowing stuff that they don't you're not supposed to know that. You're not supposed to be able to pick that crap up. I'm trying to learn how to play guitar. And I tell myself every day, I fucking suck.
Yeah.
But guess what? You're going to suck until you're good.
Yeah, try Googling how to play a guitar. You might be able to see the notes and stuff, but you are not going to be Brandon Calhoun overnight.
Yeah,
it isn't going to work.
You gotta sit down and learn stuff, and I think more so with the fact of like technology, it kind of expedites or passes that kind of realm where you just don't have to go through that anymore.
Yep.
And people just, I mean, the kids now are getting like the effects of that. It's not good, but
No, and I, like you said, I get it. I'm not blaming kids. It's not the kids' fault. Gripe if I didn't have to. If a teacher told me I could get an algebraic equation by going on my phone,
yeah,
you're dang right I'd be doing that.
Yeah.
But I just question if that's the best way of teaching kids.
yeah.
But hey,
I mean, the best way of teaching kids will always be questioned, I guess.
right.
But it's definitely helps when you're like a coach and you kind of understand that.
Yeah.
And like, just when it comes to life and like how you said, athletes, you try to get kids to become like not become athletes. You don't try to like, force them into that, but you try to like nudge them in that direction because you know what comes of it.
Mm-hmm.
So like, and I've talked to a couple college I was in strength and conditioning with Central. Like I know a lot of D1 college athletes.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, the support system they have around them, it's kind of hard to fail. You have to really not give a shit to fail. Like
Right.
all you got to do is try, because there will be people there to guide you. Like it's not that hard. I mean, it is hard, but it's not.
Yep.
There's opportunities, and I guess I kind of forgot where I was going with this. I had something, but
You have those opportunities to get better, and kids just don't like to use them, I guess.
Yeah.
And they think that people are always trying to prove them wrong or prove them insufficient, and like that's when you get like the kids at Central or the kids at anywhere, they just don't feel like they're being appreciated by like coaches and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a weird thing to think, because I never thought that growing up. Like if a coach was there, like you're spending the time to coach me, obviously you matter. Like it's pretty simple.
Right.
But like, and my dad being a coach my whole life, like they're there to do better.
Right.
But like some kids don't think that way, and I just don't understand. Like obviously you don't know what they went through, but like how could you not think that this guy is here to help you?
Yep. Well, it's a new age where it's almost like the society is teaching kids that it's okay to quit, and if you're not getting your way right away, you can just drop it and go somewhere else, like all this darn transfer portals and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Loyalty doesn't seem to be as important anymore. I know I'm dating myself big time, but one of the reasons, I go back to MJ talking about Michael Jordan being the greatest ever. One of the reasons, people want to argue that LeBron James is, and no offense to LeBron, he's a great player. You'd be an idiot to say he wasn't. But to argue that he is better than Michael Jordan is just almost laughable to me. One of the main reasons is Michael Jordan, yes, he had Dennis Rodman. Dennis Rodman was arguably the greatest rebounder and defensive player. Arguably.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying he was.
Oh, yeah.
But he couldn't throw the ball in the ocean. He had Scottie Pippen. Scottie Pippen, another great player, but he was probably the greatest sidekick ever. No offense to Scottie, but what would we be saying about? I'm just curious. What would we be saying about Scottie Pippen if he hadn't played almost his entire career with Michael Jordan? I don't know if he's even considered a top 50 player like he is now. I could be wrong, but my point is, outside of Dennis Rodman and Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan won all 6 of his championships with Steve Kerr, John Paxson, Will Perdue, Bill Cartwright. You know any of these guys? Mm-hmm. I mean, you've heard of them.
Yeah, I know a few of them.
But they don't have any numbers being...
Paxton wasn't he like a tall white guy? Like
he was a short white guy, shooter.
Oh, yeah.
Steve Kerr, Steve Kerr.
Yeah.
Horace Grant.
That was a big guy.
Guys like that, none of their jerseys are swinging from the rafters, other than on the teams that they played with Michael Jordan on.
Yeah.
LeBron James has played with with Cleveland, then Miami, then Cleveland. Now he's with the Lakers. And, if he doesn't have the players that he thinks he needs to win championships, he goes to the front office and asks the front office if they can go get Ray Allen, if they can go get Chris Bosh, or now who does he have? I haven't watched NBA in
Anthony
3 years.
Davis.
Anthony Davis. I have a hard time. Michael Jordan, he went to the Wizards at the end of his career. But loyalty, Larry Bird. Magic Johnson played with the Lakers their whole career. Derek Jeter, a different sport, but Derek Jeter will always be one of my favorite players because I just miss that loyalty to teams. I know they say professional sports are
a business.
Yeah. I get it, but that's sad to me as a fan because I want to have people that I can root for and get behind and feel like they're my guy. It doesn't feel like I have any guys anymore. I'm a basketball junkie. I literally cannot tell you one player on the Detroit Pistons right now.
I couldn't either.
Swear to God, I couldn't tell you a player. I don't know who their coach is. I think maybe Dwayne Casey
still
their coach.
He was.
I think he might be. And he seems like a great dude. But I couldn't tell you because I just have lost all interest in it because it's become such a business and such a political device. And it just makes me sick.
So the weird thing is like how that's like trickled down. Because like you're at the point, I mean, you coach a small school and you don't really see that transfer. You don't see the high-end talent that even needs to go to a different school to have the exposure, blah, 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 blah. But now you got that business in AAU and you got these kids like Amani Bates that you see, and it's just like, it's like you're teaching these kids that if they don't get, not if they don't get their way, to just go somewhere else. But like Amani Bates, he's very good, no doubt, but like he has his own team now. Mm-hmm. He was so good that he's like, well, I'm going to control everything, and I'm going to control who I play with and blah. And, like, if you have the means to do that, go right ahead. But, like, it's just new, and it's different. And, like, you don't see that. You just haven't seen that to the extent it is now. So, obviously, there's going to be people that think two ways about it. Obviously, Amani thinks it's great because he's getting his way.
Sure.
But in the sense of where's that, like, you got that just commitment to your team and like that level of loyalty, like you just don't have as many switch ups. Like you don't have as many you don't meet as many different people, I guess, which could be a negative thing, but you don't have that hometown kind of feel. And that's when it comes to like coaching or like where I want to end up in life. Central, being an intern there, kind of taught me that I don't want to work in college athletics. Because it's like, like for them, great. You're making that money. You are, you're working constantly when it comes to in season. Like, you're probably there from like 4 to 7.
Yep.
During season. I'm like, I love football, but I don't know if I love it that much.
Right.
Because that, like, there's no life there. But high school football, oh yeah, like I got my fall, like that's my fall, and obviously I have my off season that I gotta focus on. But there's a lot. It's not like I don't have the commitment, but I just there's other things that there's meaning.
It's real. There's more community there now in high school sports. Yeah. I think my boy Lake, he plays on an AAU team. For one, just to get a little bit more court time. And he has aspirations of hope if things go well. You never know. Very realistic about how hard it is to play at the next level, but what the heck? If you want to try to improve yourself and make yourself a better player and things work out, then great. There's nothing wrong with playing extra sports. But what I think has happened with teams like AAU and all this travel basketball or travel baseball and stuff, it's the trickle down effects of it scare me, because what you find is, and I've been blessed to do pretty well in my professional life, and my wife does a good job of being a teacher and benefits, so we're fortunate to have a little bit of extra money to where we can take our kid and do those things. But it's not cheap, staying at hotels every other weekend and eating out and the entry fees to all these tournaments and that kind of stuff, and the shoes and whatever it costs to be involved in that kind of stuff. Not everybody is as fortunate to be able to do that, and I think what it's kind of creating is almost like the haves and the have-nots, and it's killing, the trickle effect is killing our small schools in our BYRP, which is a Beaverton Youth Recreational Program. It's our Little League program at Beaverton.
Yeah.
It's always been so strong and such a big part of our community. I just heard this year that our 10U team only had 10 kids in it. The 10U program.
Only
So
had 10
10U, 10 years old and under, only had 10 kids in it this year. And I think, there's other reasons for that, but one of them is, the leagues have and that's not just the Beaverton problem. The leagues have been watered down because again, quote unquote, your talented kids are now going off and they're prioritizing these travel teams over their home teams, their little league teams. And then that talent gets so watered down, the product, and I don't care who you are, sports are a lot more fun when you have kids that can play the game well. Even if maybe you're a slow developer, you don't have to be the best player, but if you're on a team with kids that can play the game is fun, you're naturally going to be it's going to be more enjoyable. You're going to want to stay in that game. You're going to want to be better. You're going to get better. If everybody on the team that is pretty good is gone playing somewhere downstate, and the only kids home left playing in your little league aren't very good, and the games aren't fun, and there's no excitement that's boring. Pretty soon, over a series of years, that product starts to dwindle, and you start to see the participation fall off, and that's awful sad, because that's what you're seeing now is not advantageous to having strong programs. And what we really want to do, again, at the end of the day, I want to win as bad as anybody, but we want kids to be involved in athletics for many reasons, and one of the last reasons should be to be a professional athlete.
Yeah.
Because that's just not reality. The first on the list should be to be community-minded, be involved in a community, be involved with a team, and learn how to be on a team, learn how to win and lose together.
And you don't have that when you're switching up teams and
surround yourself with good people. All those kind of things. Going back to Gobies, you're always in an interview. You get a chance to play in front of your community since you've been a little bugger and showcase not only your athletic talents, but how you handle yourself on and off the field, when you win, when you lose. Or maybe you got a little bit of a temper, or maybe you don't handle things very well, but if you're surrounded by good coaches and good people, you see, well, God, I threw a fit when I struck out there, but that kid right there is pretty dang good, and he just struck out. When he struck out, he turned around, hustled back to the dugout, put his bat up on the hook, sat down and started cheering on his team. Now that little guy that maybe threw a fit, maybe he sees something there and learns a lesson. Those are all the things that I'm afraid are being taken away, and these people are chasing an unrealistic goal. Everybody is not going to play college sports, and very few, if any, are going to play a professional level. There's only one kid in the history of our school at Beaverton who's ever made 1 cent, to my knowledge, playing any sport, and that's Ryan Longstreth, who happens to be my next door neighbor. He got drafted by the Tigers as a pitcher and made it to the AA level of baseball. Made a couple bucks, but by no means did he get rich. But just think. My point is, of all of the athletes that have ever played at Beaverton High School, and we've had some pretty dang good ones, pretty accomplished athletes, only one of them has ever made 1 cent. So the statistics of you chasing that as opposed to missing the opportunities of being in a community and getting the benefits of what a community can do for you through athletics, to chase whatever they're chasing, it I don't know, it just scares me a little bit. I wonder if we're doing the right thing with our kids.
Like you said, if you're just switching up teams and you're not like developing those relationships, then that sense of loyalty is going to be off the window. If everything turns into AAU, you're just the only interview you have is playing good individually,
right,
to get to that higher level team.
Yep.
So yeah, you pitched a really good game, but you also yelled at all your teammates or whatever, blah blah blah. Like who's gonna watch you?
Right.
Like that shouldn't be the skill part of it. Isn't the part that needs to be emphasized. Obviously, like you said, it's the communication. It's the understanding life and how it reflects.
The other thing that I see with all this AAU stuff or travel baseball is you would think these kids are going to play in the higher level, they're playing against better competition, and I would agree. They are playing kind of all-star teams with better talented kids maybe, but I don't see the level of production being any better when they come back. I don't see them being better hitters or better pitchers or better basketball players, because when you go to these tournaments, and that's all the majority, I'm not saying all of them, but the majority of them, they just go and they play a tournament every weekend. They go play an AAU tournament every weekend, but that's all they do, and they don't spend any time in the backyard or in the gym when nobody else is watching, putting up 500 shots a day or taking 100 swings a day. When you go to a tournament and play a baseball tournament all weekend, you might play 5 games. You might take 6 swings all weekend. That isn't developing your skills. Now, get me wrong. There has to be a balance. You do have to play the game and challenge your skills against better competition. Don't get me wrong. But if all you do is go and play game after game after game, I just question how much you're improving your skills. A lot of that development comes when nobody is watching. When it's 90 degrees and you're out in the backyard taking shots, it's not just about taking shots, it's about making shots too. Yeah. But you think about stories like Larry Bird growing up in French Lick, Indiana, out in the backyard on a dirt basketball court in the winter with wool gloves on. And he had 2 balls and 2 pairs of gloves. And when one would get too wet and cold, he would just go in and switch the gloves and come out and shoot. Or when one ball would stop bouncing because it was so cold, he would take the other ball in, roll it in hot water to heat the air up in the ball, and go back out and shoot again. I think we all know who Larry Bird is.
Yeah.
And he never played, to my knowledge, he never played on an AAU team. Probably, I don't know if they could spell AAU back then, but I wouldn't trade Larry Bird in his guts and his toughness and what he did in his. I mean, yeah, he's 6'9", but he's no more talented than me.
It's just what he worked on.
But he worked his butt off and made himself one of the greatest basketball players to ever play.
It's the decisions he made that produced that, and people don't understand that there's a level of the decisions you make. There's how far are you willing to go to do such thing?
Yeah. And I'm not trying to pee on a parade of people that are playing AAU stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, my boy does it too. I'm really not. I just think there needs to be a balance, and I wish there would be some more priority put with hometown communities, because communities depend on that. You can still go and play some extra sports. You want to play AAU or travel baseball. That's fine, but I don't think it's too much to ask to put a priority on your hometown school little league team. Mm-hmm. And then we always played 3 or 4 tournaments in the month of June, and we were done.
Yeah.
If you want to keep playing, I think it would be a very nice. And some of these leagues do that, and I commend them for it. They will shut down their travel baseball for the month of June so that the little league teams can play on their little league
teams
rosters or the little league all-stars, and they can play. And that's great. And if you want to play above and beyond that, go for it. I just wish there was a little bit more priority spent in appreciation for the hometown stuff, the small town, because the
That's what you're
trickle
a part of,
down
yeah.
is showing up negatively, and I think we're losing some of those other kids that just, the game isn't as fun when it's not played as well as it could be played, and I don't like seeing that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Dang. Yeah, that was a good talk. So we'll hit one more thing up and then we'll wrap it up just because we're at an hour 50.
okay.
So, what other questions did I have for you? You know, it's actually super funny, and we'll just touch on it because I think it's weird. But both people that I've had on, at being Brandon and Scott, first 10 minutes of it, they mentioned the fact that they didn't recognize, like, you would have never recognized me going from what I am now to when I was in high school. And it's just kind of a funny thing, just because you actually knew what I would look like. And I want you to, no holds, but like, obviously, I don't care. But explain to some people what I looked like back in, like, going through, like, high school. Like, I was that tiny ass kid.
You were the runt. I mean, that's the best way to describe you. You were the runt of the litter, and that's not meant as an insult. Just you kind of touched on it before. It's how God made you. Your dad was the same way, from what I was told. Was just the littlest guy in school. Good athlete, great athlete. Just God didn't catch you up as fast as we wanted you to. Before I started calling you Shark, I called you Coach, because you always knew what was going on, like I did, or like a coach should. Mm-hmm. It was just, in some situations we couldn't get you in there, and it bothered me. And I hope I think most coaches know what I'm talking about. Some people might call BS on it, but for me, one of the hardest things as a coach is to not be able to play certain kids as much as I know they wish they could play. And you were one of them. It always bothered me not being able to play you as much as I knew you wanted to play, just because you were just small. Mm-hmm. And at that time, matchups or whatever else didn't work out. Worked your butt off after you got out of school, and now how tall are you now?
I'm 5'10".
5'10". What were you in high school?
5'5".
5'5".
Yeah,
5'4", 5'5", and weighed $120, dripping wet.
Yeah.
But I commend the heck out of you. I know you love basketball, but I think your passion is football.
Yeah.
And you stuck with it. And for you to be the starting quarterback for our varsity football team as a senior and have the year, we were 5-4. 5-4 when we lost to Meridian the last game. Mm-hmm. Barely, right? Barely. We were actually we were driving and we just didn't punch it in. And anyway, we went 5-4. We needed to go 6-3 to win to get in the playoffs, and we didn't make it. But for you, I mean, you had grown a little bit.
Yeah, a little
but not much.
No.
As a senior, for you to be the starting quarterback and slinging around and run, it didn't surprise me as far as the knowledge. You always had that. You always had the knowledge of sports, whatever you were playing, because you loved it, smart kid, and you cared about it. So that part, but physically, that was a pretty stinking impressive accomplishment for you. How many touchdowns did you throw that year? 14 touchdowns that year. Went 5-4 in a pretty good league, and we were decent, but we weren't overly talented.
We had a few guys that could play.
Yep. And so that was, and I'm not just saying that because we're talking right now. I've always been impressed with that, because we've had a hell of a lot better God-given talented people that didn't have as good a years as you did that year. And and then it's funny how things work out.
Yeah.
When you graduate school, I had a buddy similar to you, Chris George, who I grew up with, same thing. Smart as a whip, great athlete, but he was young though. He should have probably been a year behind.
I should have too.
Yeah. So, Roy says about that.
Oh yeah, what?
Roy says, well, if you weren't such a pain in the ass, your parents wouldn't put you in school so early.
No.
So
you know what Roy also said? I was in the paper as 5'9". He said I can't have a 5'4" player. So that was also one of the things. So
No, Chris George was same thing, 5'4", 5'5". Great athlete. And he got a little, I mean, almost a spitting image of you our senior year. I mean, he'd get in as much as Roy could get him in and did well. But then when we graduated, we'd go over to Ferris. Literally, our freshman year at Ferris State, he's dunking. I mean,
Dang.
he grew to 5'11" and got stronger, and just
started going.
God took a little bit longer to make him grow.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is.
It's a lot more fun playing basketball now above the rim sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a little
Well, and you got in
different.
the gym too.
Yeah.
You got in the gym and made yourself stronger, changed your body. So
Yeah. No, it was definitely weird. And getting back to like the whole like football thing, and I've always kind of want to tell this story because not many people know it, but you know that Seth Drow was the quarterback before me.
yeah.
So that whole summer going into senior year, he purposely didn't come to anything because he didn't want to be quarterback. And he knew that if he came, he would be.
Mm-hmm.
So he came to practice the first day, and he would take the backup reps for quarterback the whole entire time. And come like, I don't remember what week it was, week 2 or 3, like before the scrimmage happened, Sizer told us to come in the locker room and was like, and come in the back office and like tell us and give us that talk, like what's going on. And I'm sitting here being me, and I was always, I'm the vocal one. I was the one that thought like I was gonna have to spiel like my case, like this is why I should be blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
Before I could even get up off the couch, Seth was up explaining blah 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 blah. Like I think I can be here better than, like whatever I can do better here than at quarterback. He can do better at quarterback and allow me to be here. Blah blah. He gave the whole spiel that I was gonna give, and I'm sitting here. I'm like, geez, and it was just a weird like thing to obviously have someone like stick up for you like that.
Yeah.
And it was amazing, and it was a cool. And then Sizer literally didn't question it, didn't do nothing, and just said, yeah, like
Yeah.
that's how it goes.
I think it was a great decision. The boss just showed up. My wife is here.
Gotcha.
But no, I do, and I think you weren't that. Sizer, we don't throw it a lot, but that year we threw it a lot more because that's the kids we had, and you weren't going to run the ball all over the field. But if you were going to be on the field, and we were going to utilize Shark, it made more sense for you to run the veer. We run the veer, didn't we? Mm-hmm. And throw it, and get the ball to kids like Seth and Ian and those guys.
Yep.
So it wasn't like I don't know how many times we threw the ball a game, but we threw quite a bit.
Compared to other years, it was a lot more.
But that's a sign of a good coach. Again, that's like Roy, Coach Sizer's done a great job. You got to understand the team that you get, especially in small schools like this. We're not Orchard Lake St. Mary's who gets to pick who gets to come to school. Mm-hmm. We got to play who walks through the doors, and the best coaches will capitalize on that and use them to their best ability, and that's what he did that year, and he's continued to do that.
Yeah, I was very grateful of the situation.
Yep.
Very.
Well, you deserved it.
It was a fun time. We were looking back at pictures the other day, and it was one from my that Claire game, and it was Spenny, Nick, and Carter, and Braden. Like Braden was like pretending to get an autograph from me, and it was just like obviously me being short and everyone around me, but it was a cool picture just to know like that was the time.
Yep.
But yeah, I think we're pretty good on this. That was a good talk.
Cool. Well, I had a lot of fun.
It was good. We had a big range.
Well, hopefully, Shark, you take this to
the next level.
The next level, and you and Ben Shapiro can go fisticuffs.
Yeah.
Take
or
over.
Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan, yeah.
I'll take his job over.
And I like Ben Shapiro.
He's a funny guy.
Yeah.
He's funnier than he leads on to be for a Jew,
Yeah. Yeah, he's and Joe, I mean, they're all, it's unbelievable how much followers they have.
Yeah.
How many followers they have.
That'd be, just imagine me with that.
Unbelievable. Yeah,
what
you
would
have
happen?
to come back and talk to me again.
Yeah. Make you famous.
Yeah. I don't need to be famous. I'm good being famous in Beaverton.
Yep, and that's a great place to be famous in.
Yep.
And I wish.
If I'm not saying I'm famous.
I would like to be famous in Beaverton too someday. That'd be a great thing to come back to. Can't wait to be in the Hall of Fame.